Hey everyone, I'm Bronwyn Windenberg, and I am so excited. Today we have the beautiful Riley Knoxx here. Most of you know Riley as the biggest Beyoncé impersonator. She also had a role in the Taylor Swift You Need to Calm Down video, which is one of my favorites. I'm lucky because I know Riley as a friend through Monique. So I got to meet you under very different circumstances. It was like just a bunch of girlfriends having dinner.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Which was so much fun.
Transgender Awareness Week, which I'm sure you live that every week. So
Yes.
for you,
Yes.
I would love for anyone watching to hear your story.
I think the thing about my story is a lot of people understand. Well, a lot of people don't know. I'm almost 40 years old, so I'm 39 years old, and I transitioned at a time that was not. I mean, today, if you're transitioning, you have so many resources and you have so much support. I had none of that, and growing up was really hard. And so basically, I'll start from the beginning. My mom sent me to live with my grandmother in South Carolina, and so Southern. My grandmother was Jehovah's Witness. My grandmother was very strict, and it was really hard because every single day, well, as far as back as I can remember, at 5 years old, I always knew that I wanted to be a girl. I always knew that I felt like I was born in the wrong body. I always, I have three sisters who are all younger than me, and I always thought that, why am I not like them? And I thought, maybe when I go through puberty, just in my young head, that maybe it's going to change, whatever. Because my sister started to develop in a different way when I started to go through puberty, and it was really hard because I had no support. I had no one that looked out for me or that understood me. I also had no template for what I was, so there was no representation on TV. There was no one for me to look up to, like, all the girls that are on right now, whether it be Laverne Cox, Janet Mock, Isis King, even someone like me. There was no one for me to say, oh, that's what I'm like, So I always thought I was whatever the derogatory term was that people used for me being very girly, And so every single day, my childhood, when I think back to my childhood, it was every day of saying, stop acting like that, stop talking like that, stop sitting like that, boys don't do that, girls, you're a boy, girls stop playing your sister's hair, stop playing with her Barbies. And it was one of those things where they gave me every single toy that they could to try to smash into me and reinforce that you are a boy. And so they gave me every Matchbox toy, every fire truck, every boyish toy, to try to instill that into me. And I couldn't understand it because everything that was within me was so innate. It was so odd to me, even though, and it was one of those things where I was trying to conform to what I was taught, but it was something that I could feel inside of me. I was taught that what you are is wrong or what you're doing is wrong, but it was just like I would pray because growing up with Jehovah's Witness, I would pray and just be like, why am I different? Why am I like, just praying like, please take this away from me. And I always knew, two things I always knew. I knew I was going to be an entertainer, and I knew I was going to be a girl. And I didn't understand how it was going to happen. I just knew I needed to get the hell away from South Carolina and away from my family. And so I moved to Washington, D.C. And I met people that were like me. I met a guy, I started dating a guy, first boyfriend, and he took me to a drag club. And I saw all these people there I saw gay people, I saw trans people and drag queens. And the wonderful thing is I got to see people that were like, oh, that's what I am. Like, oh, I wasn't even old enough to get into these clubs, Bronwyn. It was kind of crazy. And they would say to me like, oh my God, you're pretty. Like, you should bring a wig and a dress and do a song. And I was like, no way, I can't do this. Like, no way. Even though I knew I wanted to be an entertainer, I just didn't know. I didn't think I'd ever become the entertainer that I am. I thought, in some way I'd be singing or doing something, whatever. And the hardest part for me, was trying to figure this out. Like, I knew I wanted to be a girl. I knew I wanted to transition. I just didn't know exactly when. And I tried to live as a gay male at first. And I still wasn't happy. And let me skip back a little bit. The thing is, growing up, they would try to beat it out of me. Like, we're gonna, like, not only with the toys, but all that, like, I was abused. But basically, you have got to stop acting like this because this is wrong, and it's wrong in the Bible and all this stuff. And that was hard. That was very hard. So coming to DC and seeing people that were so much like me, and I really had a name for what I was the best thing that could have. It is the best thing I ever did. Is getting away. And so I still tried to live, just as, because I thought it's probably more palatable for me to be just a gay male and, and not tell people that I want to transition. Even though people say to me, like, you already look like a girl, like, why are you not, when you're going to transition, people would say it to me all the time. I'm like, no, I'm not, whatever. And it was actually Monique who I told first that I was going to transition. And I will say, even though I didn't have the support of family, because my friends, when I moved to DC, became my family, having that support and having even just that one friend who did not understand, but still, she was so loving, and her husband was playing in the NFL. He was her boyfriend at the time, was playing in the NFL, but still they didn't try to hide me. They were so inclusive, and they didn't understand. Like, I had to explain to them exactly what I was doing, but they were so loving, and they were willing to learn, whether it be with pronouns, the name, everything. And that was huge for me. If I didn't have that, I don't know that I would have survived as well as I did. And, fast forward to now, having that love and support still, and, having, the representations that I have on TV, and and also being an activist myself, that is why it's so important to me, is because I didn't have that growing up. So being that for, I understand now that I have to be that for someone else, but no one was for me. And it is a wonderful thing to have. Even now, there are tons of girls that I still look up to, even at almost 40 years old. There are people that I look up to that I am, I'm inspired by still, and I'm friends with them now, that are doing activism work. They make me want to do so much more. Because the first part of my career performing, first of all, let me just say, and I've said in other interviews and stuff before, but I never thought that I was ever going to become known for what I do. It was an outlet for me, It was an outlet for me to showcase my talent, one, and also just kind of like express myself. And I definitely know that performing with those drag queens in the past, and in, having that environment around me, definitely helped mold and shape me to who I am today, which was really, I never thought that I would ever become known as the #1 Beyoncé impersonator. Never thought I'd have this guy here, Moon Man. Never thought I'd get the recognition of I wasn't doing it for that, honestly. I still don't do it for that. But I understand now that the thing that I thought was the thing that set me back is now the thing that sets me apart.
I was reading your NPR article, and you're like, I didn't mean to do this. I was just the best at it.
Well, yeah, and I didn't think when I first started performing in that drag club, I never thought that I would ever be doing what I do now, but I understand now that I have the responsibility. I think the reason that I was given all of this was because I was supposed to do something with it. Because honestly, I'll be very honest with you, the first maybe 10 years of my career were dedicated to me, performing and showcasing my talent, being pretty on stage and doing all this stuff. And, I still was kind of like quiet about my life, my actual life, being transgender, because it did, back in the day, I thought that it did hold me back. I thought that it was something that, I didn't ever want to walk into a club because I was trying to exist in the straight world. I didn't want to walk into a club with my girlfriends and be known as the transgender woman in the room, and people staring and saying all this stuff. But I really did myself a disservice, and I realized now that I was doing other people a disservice, because I got all of this, I got all of this, everything that God gave me, basically, which is, being able to be who I am and to persevere through all that I went through as a kid. It's almost disrespectful for me not to stand up and tell my story, to show people that there's another way out. There's, like, you come out of the other end of it, but also really help those girls and guys who are struggling, because not everybody has amazing parents as Jacob has, with you and your husband. And I really wish that I would have had that, but I had to find my way in a different way.
So many young people are going to look at you and go, okay, she did this, I can do this. What is something that any advice you would give to someone? Say you're 15, 16, you're in your home right now, you're struggling, you don't have the support of your parents. What is a piece of advice that you would give to, a young person or younger you even?
My advice would be the single greatest gift you could ever give to yourself. And I live by this, honestly, every day. The single greatest gift you can give to yourself is to be authentically you. And that doesn't just, that's universal for everyone, but especially for transgender people, because, when you're around the age of 15, 16, you're going through adolescence and you're trying to figure out who you are, and you're going through that, but people in the LGBTQ community go through it times 10, because they tend to be different than everybody that's around. And so you're trying to soul search and you're trying to figure out who you are. And so I will say that, especially trans kids and gay kids, we tend to get it a little bit faster than those, because you're searching so hard. But my advice would be to just be yourself. Doesn't matter. Like, it is the single greatest gift you can give yourself. And I got it later in life. I did. I got it around age, I've been in my transition now for 16 years, so about 24 years old. And even when I first transitioned, I was still trying to fit in. I didn't want to be seen and be visible, but I really did other people disservice, but most importantly, I did myself a disservice.
So you're a Black woman, you're transgender. What does Transgender Awareness Week mean to you personally?
When I first transitioned, visibility and people knowing what I was, for a lot of people in my circle, I was very much the educator, as to what I was, because they didn't really understand. They loved me no matter how I was, but they didn't really understand it. And it is visibility and awareness is so important, because I think when you start to understand other people and you start to see other people as you see yourself, you start wanting the same things for them that you want for yourself. While we have come so far in the 16 years that I have been in my transition, we have a little bit further to go with a lot of rights for the LGBTQ community, especially for transgender people, especially for transgender women of color. 32 trans women have been killed. 32 trans women of color have been killed this year. And I think that that is more than last year. Last year was 28. For me, as a transgender woman of color, it is even more so important to me that we are understood, that we are part of society, that we are integrated into society and not thought of as a taboo thing, because then that helps save lives. Earlier this year, in March, I became the first transgender woman ever to perform halftime in the NBA, but really just halftime in any kind of sport, you know what I mean? And I'm just like, we're in 2020 and I'm the first to do that. Like, what other firsts are there? There's in entertainment, that's great that we're seeing representation on TV. The great thing about that is usually that entertainment sets the tone for the way the rest of the world moves. We also want it to be sort of I don't want to have to hear about the first to do something. I want it to just be, we're just integrated into society. I understand that I also stand on the shoulders of giants, because there were, before me and my generation, there were people who literally, there were girls who literally were fighting for their lives, literally fought in the streets just so I could be able to walk down the street and not be bothered.
How are things now between you and your family?
Well, it's so interesting. The things with, especially with my mom, it's so amazing, because I used to be one of those, I would see other entertainers have their moms sit in the front row of their shows, and and be so proud of them, and I just thought, well, that's never going to be me. My mom's never going to come to the show. She doesn't even know really what I do. Fast forward to now, my mom is so proud, and my mom is constantly learning and constantly asking questions and trying to understand. I think what happened is my mom thought that me turning out different than what she expected me to turn out was going to be a reflection on her in communities where she thought that they would think of her as a bad parent. And she even said to me one time, she thought, was it something that I did that made you this way? And I was just like, no, there's nothing you did, but like, my mom understands now that who I am is okay. It's okay. And she's proud. She'll sit in the audience with her giant phone and, and film. And I brought her up on stage at my last concert, and she even she was like, I want to come up on stage, like bring me up on stage. I was just like, she's like, I want to dance too. And I'm just like, this is not about you. Like, I'm not bringing you up on stage. And I was like, no, of course I'm going to bring you up on stage, because I'm so proud of her. I'm proud of her growth. She really did grow, and it's literally a night and day kind of thing. I don't know if it's being seeing the way the world changed, but also just it feels good to have my mother be proud of what I do.
And for anyone that's going through that with their own mom or dad right now, to know, like, you might be dealing with this now, but now your mom is there.
And just even for me, because I didn't even have that one friend who just happened to be Monique Samuels, was that one friend 18 years ago who was just like, okay, I'm going to support you. And she's still doing it to this day, and she always say it prepared her for her brother and sister to come out. But, I am forever indebted to that woman because she was that one friend that I could, at the time. Now, of course, I have many friends that are that way, but she was the one friend who didn't turn her back on me and who was there for me, and is still there.
Yeah, she's an amazing woman. I'm so glad that we all got to meet, and I got to meet
Yes.
you. It was a great night. My last thing I want to ask you, and this is just, let's say there's someone in your life that's close to you that's transgender. What can you do to be as helpful and loving as possible?
I would say the first thing is to listen. I think a lot of times, what we suffer with the most is people just not understanding or being committed to not understanding. You know what I mean? Where and not hearing what the person is going through, because the thing is, there's no cookie cutter way to go through this. There's no like, well, first you get on your hormones and then you do this and do that. There's no template for everyone does it their own way. And so just listen and be as supportive as you can through that listening, and listen to what they want. That's the first thing. And then I would also say, for me, pronouns were a big thing. The name was a big thing for me. Because I think a lot of times people think that the transition, they look so much at the outside, but the biggest transition we go through is the inside, and then also understand that while we're going through a transition, everyone around us is also transitioning, because they're having to get used to this new person, or these new words, these new pronouns, these new names. And so be as patient as you possibly can, and let that person go at their own pace, because we don't all go through it in the same way. We don't all go through it at that same, like, well, now you're going to have this surgery, and now you're going to do this, and now you're going to do that. It's not always like that. And I think a lot of times people make our transitions about the outside and about how many surgeries you've had. I've had a lot of people say to me, which is very odd to me. Like, well, Riley, I can respect you because, or I get it with you because you look the way that you do. And I'm like, that's not fair, because other people may be going through, these people that they're going through their transition in a different way, but their transition is still the same as what I'm going through. Just because I'm not 6 feet tall, or because I'm not, because I look by what you think the standard of beauty should look like, doesn't mean that you don't respect that person. And that's a big thing, because, while I have pretty privilege, which, let's be real, that's a thing universally throughout the world, but especially in the LGBTQ community, as far as being, in the trans community, let that person go at their own pace, but still respect them throughout it all. Because the number one thing that trans people want is your respect.
And that's such an easy thing to do. Just respect everyone for who they are, how they were born, and
Absolutely.
let them be themselves. And I also just thank you so much for talking today, because,
of course,
especially as a mom, for me to let young people know that even if you're going through a hard time right now, that's just right now. It's like you said, things are always changing. And I really just want to reiterate that even if things are tough right now, that doesn't mean they're going to be tough forever. I know the suicide rates sometimes with the transgender community are exorbitantly high. And so just looking at your story, if there's a young person that's watching this, it's like, things might be hard right now, but they will get better. Find your people, find your community. Like, we are
find
here.
Your tribe. Yes.
You have resources, reach out. What you're going through isn't permanent in any situation in your life. So, there's a light at the tunnel. There's a beautiful life for everyone, kind of, things are always going to get better. And like, I'm just looking at you right now going, look, like,
but see, that's what I was saying before. I'm living proof that things do get better, and I just honestly want to say to you, watching your story, and your husband, your kids, like, watching this, for me, I move to tears every time you post, because honestly, for me, I hate that I didn't have that, but I'm so happy that someone else can. And hats off to you guys for being so loving, and so just, and I didn't understand it. I'm not a mother yet, but I understand that your love as a mother, like your kids, they're your heart, they're your everything. And so, I mean, for you, it's just second nature, and it wasn't like that for my mom. And so I never understood, like, I'm your kid, like, how could you not just love me unconditionally no matter what? So to see you be that way with your kid, and just, I mean, honestly, it's so inspiring to me. And I'm not even a parent yet, but I know that it's doing so much for so many other parents that are going through the same thing. And I just, I move to tears every time, because I'm like, thank God somebody got to have that. I didn't get to have that, but that was my story, my journey, and I was able to come through that. And there was a reason that it started out that way. But your kids just have the best head start already. The night that I did the NBA, when I performed at the Wizards game, afterwards there was an after party on the court, and after everybody was starting to leave, this mother came to me, and she had her son with her, and her son was probably about like 9 or 10 years old, and she says, I just want to come to you, and I want to say thank you. She said, I wanted him to come and witness this, and witness history being made in person. And I didn't really get it at first, like when she was just like, and I was just like, oh, okay. And then she introduced me to her kid, and I was like, oh my God, her kid was trans, and she wanted her kid to see history being made. And for me, that one person, it was all worth. It was like, I don't care about the history being made, all of that. This is the reason that I do what I do. And it just she was so loving and so amazing, and the kid was just the most brilliant kid. Like, I could see that light in that kid even within those like 5 minutes that we were talking. It was just amazing, and I just love seeing that. And that's honestly what I see with you, is just a parent being so amazing and supportive. And I really thank you for doing this, honestly.